Before we begin, in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining children under the age of 13, violating the Child's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies meant to dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. This video is not made for kids. It is not targeted at kids. It is not advertising to kids. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Now that we've finished Sarah Jane Smith, it's time to do the ranking. You know how this works. Everything is my own opinion, so if you disagree, that's great. Share your thoughts in the comments. There's 9 stories to get through. Sorry for the rushed opening. I just want one of my rankings to be under 20 minutes for once. Also, we've started getting into summer weather where I live. Around where I live in Nevada, you get winter, you get summer. Spring and fall do not exist. And it gets really hot. So I want to finish this as soon as possible so I can turn my fan back on again. So without further ado, let's just jump. Starting us off, number 9, the DAO Connection. I hope I made my utter disdain for this story painfully clear. This was just so painful to get through. The pacing was a slog. The plot was mostly uninteresting and didn't tie into the overarching plot of Series 1 at all. And the villain was just disgusting. And again, not in the way I think he was intended to be. It was just... This isn't one of the worst things I've heard. This isn't one of the worst things I've listened to. But it's one of the worst things I've reviewed. And I really hope I never have to listen to it again. In fact, next time I decide to listen to Sarah Jane Smith, I kind of want to skip this story just to see how it affects the overall plot. I imagine not much. Number 8. Whoop, kicked the desk there, sorry. Ghost Town. Yeah, number 8, Ghost Town. Again, this story was just painfully average. I just didn't care. Again, I wasn't engaged. And this is the story where I talked a little bit about in my video where I am so sick of this kind of premise. I know this is a spin-off, but I'm going to talk about Doctor Who in general. The whole, let's do a ghost story, or let's do a haunted house story. But twist, it's not really ghosts. It's becoming so tired because, like the Daleks, it's coming up so much. And every time it comes up, the story needs to work harder and harder to accomplish, to be good, essentially. And this story just doesn't. It was so average, and I think it was one of the hardest stories I had to review because it was so average. Like, as soon as I finished it, I immediately started forgetting about it. Number 7, Comeback. The first story of the series. I thought it was mostly okay. I think it did its job setting up what was going on mostly well. Elizabeth Sladen was great, and the moment Jeremy James, as Josh Townsend, gets introduced, he and Sarah immediately click. Liz Sladen and Jeremy James are great, and they play off each other really well. The biggest problem is that this is obviously 2 stories mashed into one. You have the story introducing the overarching plot of Series 1, and then you have a story exclusive just to Comeback, a story that would just be the focus of Comeback, the mystery. And it's very obviously that smashed together. These stories don't go together, and because half of the story is one thing and half of the story is another thing, both stories ultimately end up suffering. Coming up next at number 6, my least favorite story of Series 2, Snowblind. It's not that Snowblind is bad, not at all. It's still really good. It's just that it's disappointing. Like I said, the best way to explain it is it's obviously meant to be an Antarctic thriller, among the likes of The Thing or Whiteout, or why are those the only 2 I know? Anyway, but the problem is it tries to be, where its failings come in, is those Antarctic thrillers, they really set up this feeling of isolation, of paranoia, of essentially claustrophobia as well, and Snowblind never accomplishes that. Which again, when you have a story about people being suspicious of each other and ultimately turning on each other, is one of the biggest problems, because, up until the twist reveal, I I wasn't suspicious of anyone because the story didn't do a good job of setting that mood, setting that tone. Number 5, Buried Secrets, the first story of Series 2. Outside of, again, like Ghost Town, this story just isn't that memorable. I liked a lot of the big ideas more. There's a lot of great moments in it, like Sarah at the diner having that monologue about Harry and wondering where Harry is. The introduction of Will Sullivan, Harry's brother, is really good. And for me, my favorite part, the introduction of what Series 2 would be about. The Orbis Pastramo and the Exemplar Crass and the Herald, this new conspiracy, and what it all means to Sarah. But outside of those big ideas, it's just a very blah story. I think it's only slightly more memorable than the last 3 stories I mentioned. The last few stories I mentioned, Snowblind and Comeback in Ghost Town. It's borderline average, but it's marginally better because it does have some much more memorable moments. Number 4, Mirror Signal Maneuver. Again, I really like this story. I like how the conspiracy against Sarah Jane was revealed, and when you think back on it as you listen to it, I like how it was executed. I like how it's someone that the audience knows, that the audience has a history with. And I love the scene between Sarah and Hilda Winters. I just ultimately thought that, again, my biggest problems with this story were, 1, the heavily punctuated timeline. Like, again, Sarah's traveling all over India, and then Josh has to fly from England to India, and then he has to find her, and it just, again, it feels being very rushed, and, that shouldn't have taken that quick. And the other thing being, how anticlimactic it was, in the final moments of the story, Sarah and Josh are talking about the ending, but we don't actually get to see it, which is, after all this buildup and all these great scenes and performances, is really disappointing. Number 3, Dreamland, the finale of Sarah Jane Smith. The reason this is at number 3, and the reason I think it doesn't rank higher, is that this is a cliffhanger. It's obviously building up to something else that we will never get, because, as I mentioned, at the time of doing this, School Reunion came out, and then Liz Sladen was under contract to do the Sarah Jane Adventures, which means she couldn't come back and finish the series. But, despite that, I think everything else in Dreamland is really good. I love the performances, especially from Elizabeth Sladen, Sadie Miller, and Jeremy James. And, like I said, I think if you frame it as a crisis of faith story, it works a lot better. It does feel more definitive. The ending does, when you think of it like that. Combined with my headcanon that what Sarah saw at the end was the TARDIS. And I love how Sarah's begun thinking about everything. Again, there's just so many great performance moments in this story. Sarah's speech to Natalie about how she remembers the Doctor, or Josh's death. That was such a great moment. I do feel that a lot of the things I do like about this story do make up for the shortcomings of it being unfinished, of it being a part of a greater whole. But that being said, I do think it is still unfinished, which is why it's not my favorite. Number 2, Test of Nerve. This was my favorite story of Series 1, and I loved everything about it. I love how, right from the beginning, it gets your heart going, the adrenaline is pumping, and you're just on the edge of your seat, and you stay there all the way to the end. Elizabeth Sladen, once again, is phenomenal as she's letting her paranoia get to her, and then she realizes she's in a race against time to stop a terrorist attack. The ramifications of Sarah's actions are really good, like how she chooses to save all of London over Natalie. Again, a decision that both characters agree was in the right, but leaves them both deeply shaken. The villain, Mr. Harris, was really great. This story is a perfect example of why I love thrillers. But there can be only one. Number 1, my favorite story of Sarah Jane Smith, Fatal Consequences. Where do I even start? I could gush about the performances again, because they've all been great. The twists this story takes. 1, they're well executed. You never see anything coming. Like, you don't see Josh being a member of the white chapter of the Orbis Pastramo. I'm ghosting over details, because again, if you've been following me review the series, you already know what's happened. Or the revelation of how Sarah realizes she is the Herald, and everything that's happened is her fault, and that this story is sort of a pseudo-sequel to Mask of Mandragora. Which I really love the scene where all of those pieces fit together. Which brings me to the other point. The twists are, 1, like I said, they're well executed, they're well handled, and they're earned. Nothing feels cheap. Nothing feels out of the blue. And the things that do feel unexpected, it's not in a way that turns you off. Like I said, it feels like the story earns these twists. And like Test of Nerve, the tension is really good. The tension is really good, only this time it's turned up to 11. Jacqueline Pierce, once again, is just brilliant. And I really don't know what else to say, because I just gushed about that story. I gave it a perfect 10. You know, what more is there to say about how great this story is? And there you have it. That was my rankings of the stories in the spin-off, Sarah Jane Smith. Again, I want to apologize for the rushed nature of this video, but I am boiling right now. And anyway, what were your thoughts on Sarah Jane Smith if you've heard it? Please start a conversation in the comment below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload, share my video around, all of it helps my channel grow. In the description box below, you'll find the link to my Ko-fi where you can support me in the channel, and you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. Especially right now, because I'm going to be taking another break, mainly because I don't know what story arc I'm going to cover next. But until then, this is the Sentinel, watching Geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.